you clicked on this video, it's not a coincidence. It means we have a shared curiosity about AI music. And specifically, can AI music replicate classical music? I've just come back from the Albert Hall performance. I've got here the Royal College of Music. Will they all be replaced by AI? I think not yet. I've spent my time watching classical musicians and other YouTubers talking about AI music and comparing it to real music. That's like Chen, TwoSet Violin, the music professor Anthony Fantano and others, and just seeing how they explored AI music and different methods. And I think it's not there yet. There's a few things that are missing, although it's done a really good job. Anything that's related to pop music, rap, modern productions, it tends to do it very well actually. And I think it has to do because it's more predictable. The structure itself is easier to predict. Maybe the drums allow it to be better predicted. So I want to clarify three ways in which AI was used to make music. And the first one, the most effective one, is using audio, recreating audio, like classical music audio. So the AI has been trained to understand all sorts of music audios. And so it recreates the sound of the orchestra playing in a room very nicely, to be honest. And that's really good. The other two types are AI scores. So for softwares like Sibelius, where you get to see the music score, the AI has learned to create a music score, putting the notes where it should be and putting the correct dynamics, etc. And then the last version, which I think is a bit slow and not very effective, but has some charm to it, is using ChatGPT or LLM. It'll be giving you word-based instructions. So word-based instructions to follow a certain composition. So you would then put it into your program or you would play it on your keyboard. And so that's not very effective. It doesn't really understand music comprehensively. So in ranking of good musicianship, audio AI top, music score AI top, and ChatGPT a bit lower, like 10 points lower on a scale of 15.
Really, I said a year, we will be replaced.
So AI music does not get it right yet. And I'll tell you what's missing. And it's a common theme among all of these YouTubers. They're saying similar things, but I've got here the music science and psychology perspective and composer perspective. I'm gonna start with some things that AI doesn't get right that are minor compared to the major things that it's missing. Firstly, it gets confused in some cases between different eras of music. So for instance, it might confuse Bach with Vivaldi, Baroque music with Romantic music, classical versus, this Mozart classical music, compared to, Bach, let's say, counterpoint music. So this can actually be, it's minor because it probably relates to the scientists and engineers that are preparing the algorithms. The data set itself could be better described, or can have a data set that incorporates specifically Bach and Vivaldi and Romantic period composers, classical composers, such that it improves its detection and differences between these different composers. Or because it has a better description, so it can identify, oh, this is Bach, this is Vivaldi, because the engineers, the humans have said, yeah, annotated, this is what it is, this well described.
There's yet another reason that I haven't mentioned yet, which goes in line with the recent 11 Labs AI music generator tool that's being put out. That's quite good, but it still has the major problems that I'll be talking about later. But regarding this minor problem, it's the licensing aspect of the music databases. And what 11 Labs has just done is get a licensing deal with publishing and recording rights companies. Those are Merlin Network and Cobalt Music, which actually provides a new way for musicians to make some money. What's the way? Well, there's first an upfront licensing fee, which might be on a annual basis or something like that, that is paid out to the licensing companies, and then to some extent, somehow it's split up with the creators as well, the musicians. Then the other aspect is royalties based on the usage of the AI music generation tool, output and any training that's required for the AI model. So as a musician, there may be a new way of making money there. Make music for AI models. Now, if you're enjoying this, make sure to subscribe, like and comment. I would really appreciate your help and your insights. I will be showing you what I did with 11 labs later on during the track. I asked for some classical music and you'll see the results. The other aspect that's minor but it's pretty important in terms of detecting whether it is AI music, it's the fact that it gets timings sometimes wrong. It doesn't do this for predictable music. So here, predictable music, music that's 4x4, like any pop music, EDM music, rap, trap, country music, all of this music is well predictable in terms of its timing. But classical music has a lot of changes, and what's called rubato, for instance, is you slow down the tempo to you at your own will. These are just examples in which classical music has a more sophisticated use of timing in music, and it's perceivable in the AI classical music because what happens is that suddenly you get a loud chord change that's happening at a seemingly weird position, and so it feels off, the timing is off. So I don't know how AI researchers can improve this. I wonder if it has to do with incorporating either descriptions or an algorithm, a model that does good timing perception or better timing perception in classical music, or whether it is by training AI on different types of timing in music. So that's up to the experts, AI experts, to decide how you do this. Rhythms sound a bit off, beats come at weird places. Chen struggled a bit with this, and TwoSet Violin as well mentioned struggled with this.
I can't tell what time it is in.
Now actually Mozart or classical music is a bit of an exception because it is actually pretty predictable in terms of harmonies that are being used or melodies or rhythms. It tends to be quite steady rhythms that Mozart uses. Now there's a lot more nuance that AI is missing, but it kind of gets Mozart-like classical music pretty well. Again, the big thing is what separates AI music and real music is understanding of harmony and harmonic tension, and it influences its melodic phrases, and this is what AI is missing. It will explain anything that sounds AI music. So it doesn't correctly predict harmonic sequences, but really it's harmonic arcs. So it's narrative arcs, or there's basically 3 layers of harmonic sequences. There is the long arc, which is in the case of classical music that lasts 30 to 1 hour, 30 to 60 minutes. This type of music tends to separate in different sections, which are called movements in general. And they tend to portray different moods, but within each movement, it tells a story. So this is the long arc, because there is still a sort of story or emotional journey you can have from the start of the piece to after 1 hour. Then there's midterm, which I'm going to give 1 to 5 minutes harmonic sequences, which let's say it's a movement, and it tells you an emotional arc, and it has some sort of harmonic sequences that change over time and guide you through some sort of emotional journey at a shorter time period. And the melodies follow this. The melodies and melodic phrases are giving a continuation of that journey. Finally, the shortest harmonic sequence is that of the melodic phrases, which a melody has to follow a harmonic sequence, let's say something that lasts within 30 seconds or something like that, and has to understand how chords relate to one another. How do you go towards a homeward feeling? How do you give an increase of tension? And so if, I guess, AI was trained on a data set that gives harmonic tension and release, and how melodic phrases follow this harmonic tension and release within the different scales, it might be better able to replicate classical music and even jazz. I've actually just learned with my recent podcast with the Earth Echo Collective. There's a PhD in music, and he also studied physics. He went to this research center in very famous for music research in Paris called the IRCAM. He mentioned the temporal semiotic unit, which is the minimal, meaningful musical phrasing. And there's several that have been researched, and it's really this actually, it's how harmonic tension and release and harmonic predictability, unpredictability is constructed within a piece, and different ways it's used. It's really the expressivity of music in compositions, and they describe it as a musical gesture. The podcast is linked down below. But this ties in very importantly with the next points. The research, music science and computational research by Marcus Pierce, music scientist, who discovered that musical pleasure is guided by balance between predictability and surprise in harmonic sequences. More specifically, when a harmonic sequence or simply a musical segment is quite predictable, as in the case usually of pop music, having a splash of unpredictability will really create pleasure, musical pleasure. In the case of situations where there's a lot of musical unpredictability, providing very predictable sequences is very pleasurable. So I'm going to call this the musical pleasure principle, inspired by Freud's pleasure principle, which he says guides all of our actions. And so the musical pleasure principle incorporates basically an understanding of, I've been playing this music that's been quite predictable recently, let me put something that's unpredictable here. And we can call this the aesthetic intuition that TwoSet Violin or other YouTubers mention, that composers bring in and make it human, make music human. Basically, it's an understanding of the musical pleasure principle, in addition to an understanding of harmonic sequences, as I've described it before. You know, temporal semiotic units could be a way of describing this.
I would like to talk briefly about an interesting experiment one of the YouTubers did with ChatGPT. This was the guy who was using ChatGPT to give a language instruction of musical ideas, which I think is not as effective. The chords were kind of simple, it seems quite popish. The only thing that really worked well for rhythms that were interesting was when the YouTuber asked to compose a melody in varying time signatures, so not just 4/4. So every bar was a different division of time, of the measure, a time signature, and it resulted in a kind of groovy melody. Otherwise, it wasn't able to do very interesting stuff. But he did this experiment to do Schoenberg-like music. This is serialist music, basically music that has no harmonic basis. And the goal of this composer, Arnold Schoenberg, for those who don't know, was to deconstruct completely harmony and chords, harmonic sequences, by playing, for instance, all the 12 notes on the piano in a certain random order. And so I'm putting them in different rhythms, stacking them on top of each other with different instruments in different ways, so that it sounds very unpredictable. You can't follow through very clearly necessarily. There's all a tradition of unpredictable music, the contemporary music that tends to be like that. He's the pioneer. And ChatGPT did a quite random piece, let's say, that does have very serialist style music. And yeah, it did a good attempt. But it was coming back to certain just harmonic chords. It finishes off on a chord arpeggio, which could happen, but it's not. Again, I think by having an understanding of harmonic sequences, AI could be better able to go away from harmonic sequences, like Schoenberg was aware of music theory. He was trying to break it. He was trying to break the rules, which is a very human thing to do, to sparkle unpredictability, to sparkle surprise with the aesthetic intuition, let's say. Again, having a musical understanding of harmonic sequences and maybe the musical pleasure principle would also improve even with music that's unharmonic, let's call it like that, like Schoenberg's. I'll finish off this vlog by talking about jazz and improvisation. So I established what AI music is lacking and how it could be improved given this the harmonic sequence understanding and the musical pleasure principle, in addition to timing, perfection, and historical data improvement. So I'll start first with jazz music. I wanted to understand how AI does jazz music. So you see the prompt I used, I wanted to do a Miles Davis, Bill Evans style cool jazz. And this specific AI actually creates lyrics in addition to create jazz, but you can also do instrumentals, which is what I did for the classical music that you've been hearing in the background. And the jazz music that it created was lounge jazz, which is much more predictable because the drums tend to be a more 4/4, tend to be like in pop music, rap music. The timing is, predictable, and he did a really good job. It's in the style, let's say, of Ella Fitzgerald, and the music it recreated is very nice, you can tell yourself. But here's an aspect about improvisation. Chen took a audio music AI, classical music, that mimicked a violin
improvisational classical piece, and he recreates it, he reinterprets it, so it sounds very nice. You know, there's his interpretation of AI music. But what's interesting is that this free-flowing, free-time music, which is characteristic of particular improvisation music, worked quite well because it was there was a bit of randomness happening. But again, if it had the harmonic sequence understanding, its melodic phrases in the improvisations would be even better, more human if you want. So this ties back into the aesthetic intuition of a musician or a human, which is important also for improvisation in jazz or whatever types of improvisation. We could actually describe it as two ways. In the neuroscience first, which dictates that during improvisation, during a flow state, the brain parts that is responsible for regulating, controlling yourself, which is the prefrontal cortex, shuts off. This is the same in meditation. You're kind of letting go. You're letting things be unpredictable, which is not something that the AI does. AI actually tries to be predictable. It tries to predict. So there's that aspect in improvisation, or the aesthetic intuition that is lacking in AI compositions and AI music, that's related to the fact of letting go. It can also be described using the musical pleasure principle in the following way. A musician, a composer who has an aesthetic intuition that's developed, will be able to detect when the music has been predictable for a certain amount of time and when it has been unpredictable in a certain amount of time. So this aesthetic intuition and judgment ties the judgment. It tries to sprinkle unpredictability, it just tries to sprinkle surprise. So incorporating into the AI algorithm the need to have surprise, the need to have unpredictability, might improve its AI music to the point that it sounds completely human. It's doing a really good job, AI music. Just telling you, there's aspects that makes it unhuman, which makes it AI. So how can we make AI incorporate the aesthetic judgment into it? Well, as mentioned, incorporating surprise. However, we also have to get the right data sets. Maybe getting really precise and creative AI comes down to fine-tuning AI to Bill Evans, for instance, to Miles Davis, to Mozart, to Kendrick Lamar, Tupac. You have all of these AIs that fine-tuned to these different genres and artists. And then you can combine these AIs, and then you can create novel music. This is what a human does to some extent, but obviously it does it to, first, it uses much less energy to do that, 20 watts. The brain only needs much less energy to recreate all of the magic of music that it creates. And AI, on the contrary, needs a large amount of energy to recreate all of this. So there's the caveat that information, it has to be, or data sets have to be given to AI that really provide some sort of precision to understand and distinguish between musical information that a human is capable of understanding at a much less time, but really comes down to humans are capable of understanding, you and me are capable of understanding very abstract ideas, and this allows you to kind of change your perspective on things, whereas AI kind of has to go from a bottom-up perspective. It needs to get thousands of experiences to detect differences. So yes, AI is getting better, but it's lacking the coherence of a biological body. The millions and trillions of things that are happening in cells, between organs, between the brain and the rest of the body. The embodied cognition is not there yet in the AI. Might come with robotics, who knows? It comes with giving these sort of musical-based models that I've been describing. The musical pleasure principle and harmonic sequence trajectories and the harmonic sequence arcs. If you want to learn more about this, make sure to follow. We've been talking about the limits of AI music. I'll just have a quick side note on Anthony Fantano's video about AI music, which he was saying AI music is actually evil. And why is it evil? Obviously it's amazing in imitating. And with these caveats that I've mentioned, that makes it still be AI music and not sound like human music in classical music cases and jazz improvisation. AI music is evil because it's the companies that want to really make amazing AI music, in Fantano's perspective, are music labels, because they will be able to pay less people if they have amazing AI models that replicate really pleasurable music. So I have given out the secret sauce here, I have to be honest. And the reason that I'm interested in understanding and modeling music in a good way is to apply it in therapeutic purposes to benefit humans for humans to really have the best musical experience, that it has therapeutic purposes, not necessarily in a clinical way, but in a well-being way. You know, you don't need to be in a clinical state to be needing music. So AI music is evil in Fantano's perspective, because the goal is to create even more profit and get rid of artists. I'm just going to show you with this example that I use with 11 Labs. My input was create a classical piano concerto from the 17th century, because you can't write any names, so it would have been Mozart, in Vienna, to say, you know, Mozart was in Vienna, composed of two main themes, Allegro and Allegretto. That was just because I saw they knew what that meant in a previous prompt, where the piano and the strings extend the theme through call and response. So just to have a sort of conversation between the piano and the strings. Incorporate rubato during a piano solo sections, and accompany the piano solo with rapid descendendo from the violins and celli at the end of the piano's melodic phrases. So here I tried to incorporate something a bit more detailed, because I had initially done another one. I wanted something in the style of Beethoven, but it suggested this prompt instead, which was a bit more detailed. So as a consequence, I went with that. What rubato means slowing down, and descendendo, I think is an actual word to say that the violins and the strings are just going, you know, going down. And I said in particular when the melody of the piano is ending, so you know, something like that. And so it came up with this. So I'm just gonna comment on top. So far, not bad. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, the sound quality isn't amazing for some reason. And here, did you see that? That was slightly before. The strings were like too early. And that was a rubato, but I doubt that the AI knows what a rubato is. The piano slowed down there at the end. I'm pretty sure it comes from the AI model being trained on pieces that have an ending to the piece that slows down like that, because that's a very common way to slow down. And the reason I'm pretty sure they don't know it's a rubato is this is the opening, and in the rubato section, if you go here, piano rubato, there is no rubato. Here are moments where the harmonic aspects are not respected, in the sense that there's a sort of strong dissonance that, I mean, you could make a piece like that, but it's not something common from, let's say, the gold standard of classical music. Anyway, apart from the fact that it sounds like it's a sprint and a marathon for the pianist, that they have to play this constant, steady rhythm that's pretty much throughout. The aspect with classical music is there's a lot of sophistication that's not yet captured by AI models. If you've enjoyed this vlog about what AI music cannot do yet, make sure to subscribe, let me know in the comments what you think. So there you go. That's where I think AI music is lacking, and the ways to actually improve it. You can also check out this video where I show you how I use AI music in my own music, or you can also check out this other video where I briefly explain how AI can solve the 4 problems I've outlined, thanks to an AI expert who's taught me the solutions. If you've enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe and like to learn more about music science. I'll see you soon. Ciao.